Hi, this is Lamenter's Jail, and this video is a full guide on how to defeat the Fire Giant at Rune level 1, Weapon level 0, just how to go about recognizing and reacting to every single one of the moves that he has. But that comes a little bit later. I did name the title of this video, How Literally Anyone Can Beat the Fire Giant at level 1, so I do want to show you the easiest method that I found to go about doing this if you just want to bypass the fight the easiest possible way by learning the least amount of things possible. This is how you do that. This fight is kind of like 3 phases almost. There's like phase 1 and then phase 1.5 and then phase 2. In phase 1, the strategy is very simple. All you have to do is mount Torrent and then stay kind of far away from the Fire Giant. And when you're far away from him, he can only do one of 2 things. He'll either use his Striding Plate Slam move, or he'll do the Avalanche move. We are hoping that he's going to do the Striding Plate Slam move, because every time he does that, you're going to be able to run towards him slightly, and then when he stops moving, you'll use your Rotten Breath attack. It's just a fully charged version of it. And then you'll immediately start just sprinting away and making distance again, and then getting pretty far away, and then at that point you'll just continue to strafe back and forth, wait for him to use the Striding Plate Slam move again, and then you'll just punish it the same exact way that you did, where you run forward, use Rotten Breath, run away, and then continue to maintain that distance, waiting for him to do it again. So it's pretty much just wait for the Striding Plate Slam move, punish that move, and then run away and wait for it again. That's the entirety of phase 1. It is slightly more complicated than that because, like I said earlier, he can also use the Avalanche attack when you're far away. But that move is really easy to dodge. All you have to do is, as soon as you see him start using it, wait for the snow, like the part of the move where the snow starts to appear on the ground, and then when it does, you'll just want to dismount Torrent using the just normal, like, get off of Torrent animation. You don't want to actually jump off of him, because that animation is faster than the simple, like, stepping down from him animation. We want the stepping down one because it has more invincibility frames, and it allows you to have a bigger window of, like, reaction time. So yeah, you'll just wait for the snow to appear, you'll dismount Torrent like the slow, regular way, and then you'll immediately get back onto Torrent and continue to strafe back and forth, waiting for that Striding Plate Slam move that you can punish. That's it for phase 1, but phase 1.5, when he gets down to about 80% health, he's gonna roll away and then stick his hand in his mouth, and it'll catch on fire, and then he will, from that point forward, use a couple of fire attacks that he can still do when you're far away from him. The first fire attack is the fireball that he just like launches at you. It's called Giant's Flame Take Thee, if you're familiar with the incantation names. And that one you don't really even have to pay attention to. You just continue to strafe back and forth, and as long as you're running sideways, it won't hit you. So he will launch it at you, but it's not dangerous and not scary at all. The second move that he does, though, in phase 1.5 is kind of scary. In fact, it's the scariest move that he has, to me. It's the Flame of the Fell God move, where he summons like a fire orb that just slowly floats in the air and just floats towards you for kind of a long time. Once it gets near you, it will explode into like some fire that remains on the ground that you have to avoid. And the reason it's the most dangerous move is because he will use that, it'll float around, and then he'll use other moves at the same time that you have to dodge while that's continuing to float towards you. So just the fact that you can be distracted while that thing is floating at you is what makes it dangerous. But you can do a couple things to deal with this. My recommendation would be, if it's close to him, if it's like still floating near him when he's doing his like Striding Plate Slam or just kind of chilling, you'll want to just stay away from him and allow the Scarlet Rot to whittle his health down, and you'll just wait for that thing to explode on its own. It takes a little while, but once it does, you can continue with your Striding Plate Slam baiting. And alternatively, if you notice him doing something that you are aware just takes a while for him to do, such as like rolling around or whatever, you can approach the orb, which will trigger it to make a sound and like light up really bright really quick, and then it'll explode a second later, but you do have enough time to approach it, get it to make that sound, and then run away before it explodes, just so you don't have to worry about it anymore. And that is all the information you should need to get through phase 1. You'll just use Rotten Breath every time he uses the Striding Plate Slam move, and otherwise just avoid whatever damage you can. and then eventually you'll just be in phase 2. And phase 2 always plays out exactly the same way, and it's really fast. So if you get to phase 2, it's likely you're gonna be able to win entirely. All you have to do is immediately as phase 2 starts, you're gonna drink your Flask of Wondrous Physic, which gives you the stats that you need to be able to wield the Godskin Peeler, because hopefully you used like the strength and dexterity boosting tiers in your Physic. And then you'll equip that Godskin Peeler and then run towards his hand, because he's always going to do the same thing in phase 2 as the first move that he does, which is put his hands down on the ground and then create some fire pillars around him. So when he does that, you just run up to his hand and use the Black Flame Tornado fully charged move. And then once that move ends, you'll immediately hop on Torrent and make distance from him, just so you don't have to worry about him like punching you or whatever. He can just use some random attacks after that first Flame Pillar attack, but what you're going to want to watch out for is his volcano attack, which he does very consistently do very quickly into phase 2. In fact, he usually does that just right after the flame pillars, just right away. So when he does, you're going to want to run right up to his leg and then use a fully charged Black Flame Tornado 2 more times. And that should literally be all you have to do to beat him. He'll be dead after 3 fully charged Black Flame Tornadoes in phase 2. It's really fast. And there is some luck involved with this a little bit, just because when he's doing the volcano attack, he does spew out a bunch of projectiles that go in random spots all around him. And if you're standing right next to him, there is a chance, there's a possibility that those projectiles can land directly on top of you and then explode, and then you'll die. But that does not invalidate the fact that this strategy with the Black Flame Tornado during the volcano attack and the Flame Pillar attack, that strategy is still the best strategy to go about beating phase 2 at rune level 1, weapon level 0. So you're just going to want to hope that none of those projectiles lands on top of you while you're Black Flame Tornadoing. And if they do and you die, you just have to try again. But just rest easy knowing that that is unlikely to happen twice in a row. So next time you get to phase 2, which shouldn't be very difficult, should just take you a couple of tries. Next time, it should work. And so yeah, congratulations. Once you've defeated the Fire Giant, you now have access to the Crumbling Farah Missoula at rune level 1, weapon level 0, and that is really cool. And now I just wanted to kind of, before I go over the actual moves and each move and how to react to them and whatnot, I do want to show you just really quick how to go about easily getting the Black Flame Tornado stick that you need for phase 2, the Godskin Peeler, and that's what you're seeing right now. You just need to defeat this Godskin Apostle in Windmill Village. It's not very difficult. You just sneak up behind him and use Poison Mist over and over until he dies. He'll never see you. He'll never turn around as long as you're sneaking up behind him. And so you can just stand there, use Poison Mist over and over. It takes a while, but there's no risk whatsoever involved with it, and eventually he will die of the poison, and you'll get that Godskin Peeler. And I guess while we continue just to watch this guy get poisoned to death, I will address another thing that I was thinking about when I was making this video, that being another method of defeating the Fire Giant with, it just basically involves summoning Latenna and then getting the Fire Giant stuck in one spot and letting Latenna, the summon, snipe it from far away and just kind of chilling. I did consider using that strategy in this video, but I chose the Rotten Breath strategy instead for a couple reasons. First thing being, well, I haven't used spirit summons yet in this series, so I'd like to, I guess, continue to not use them. And another thing, the second thing I was thinking about was, if I was going to use spirit summons, the video series is like a weapon level 0 specific series, and so I would also use a weapon level, or not weapon level, but spirit summon level 0 spirit summon. And so when I tried to do that when I was testing with Latenna, the unupgraded spirit summon just was doing what, like 12 damage per second or something like that, and Fire Giant has a huge amount of health, and so it just didn't seem viable to me. It just took too long. I was successful with it, but it just took too long, and the Rotten Breath is easy enough, not that much harder than Latenna, and it's way faster. So that's what I prefer, and that's why I chose that method. Anyway, at this point the video has moved on to the easy method to obtain a Dragon Heart for the Rotten Breath incantation. You do need to spend a Dragon Heart in order to purchase that incantation, so the easiest way to go about getting one is to defeat the easiest dragon in the game to defeat, which is Caelid, who is in Limgrave, just right next to the starting area of Limgrave, inside of that like little crater that's a lake. And you just make sure that he gets summoned, and then you hop up on some rubble that's right next to his like arena. And as long as you're standing at the back of the rubble, he's gonna try to shoot fire breath at you because that's what he does at long range, but it won't actually be able to hit you when you're back there, when you're standing like up against the very rock wall behind the rubble, basically. That's kind of a safe spot. And if you're using the longbow and you just use the default Ash of War on the longbow mighty shot, you can you can shoot your arrows really far away, and he will kind of walk pretty far away, so you do need to be able to do that. And I just chose to use the serpent arrows because he does walk really far away, so your damage from your actual arrows goes down a lot when he goes really far away. So having him be poisoned means he's going to continue to take damage the entire time that you're shooting at him, even if he's really far away. So that's just convenient, and serpent arrows are infinitely purchasable in Caelid. And then one other kind of like optional thing you might be able to consider is using Burred bolts and the pulley crossbow as your weapon in fighting phase 2 instead of the Black Flame Tornado. It's kind of a hybrid between like an actual regular fight with melee and doing that whole phase 2 with just melee, and the Black Flame Tornado, which is kind of like a cheesy method of defeating him where you don't actually fight. Like if you're using the pulley crossbow, the fight will go by extremely quickly, but you will have to dodge a little bit while you're participating in phase 2. Phase 2 will still last like under a minute, but he will start to attack you within that minute. So if you're using the pulley crossbow, you still have to like pay attention to learning how to dodge moves, so it's not like complete cheese, but it is the easiest way that isn't Black Flame Tornado to defeat him. And getting the Burred bolts is kind of hard because you have to defeat this random like enemy that is guarding the merchant that sells them, and he is in like an end game area, and he's kind of strong. So what you're seeing right now is how I just go about defeating him. It's not totally reliable because sometimes he'll just use moves that are inconvenient and that just kill you. But if you use the Twiggy Crack tier, you won't lose your runes when you die, and you will respawn right outside that cave, very, very close to that guy where he spawns and the merchant. So because of those two reasons, you can just keep on retrying over and over, and eventually using this strategy, you will succeed and you'll be able to buy your Burred bolts. And I definitely couldn't like mention getting the Burred bolts if I wasn't going to show an example of using them in phase 2. So this is a clip of me doing that, just showing off the power of the pulley crossbow. I wouldn't use them in phase 1 just because you have 99 of them only, and you will run out before you get to phase 2, or finish phase 2 at least, if you just used them throughout the whole fight. So it's more of like a phase 2 weapon. But if you've been beating him up with like a hammer or something and he's got a bunch of poise damage, it's possible that with your pulley crossbow you will poise break him and he'll just fall on the ground, and that would be even better for you. It'll just make you bleed him even more before he has a chance to actually do anything. And like I said in the Black Flame Tornado section, he always does like the same thing at the beginning of the fight every single time, that being the Flame Pillar move, which you can just stand in place and shoot at him during. And then at some point he's going to do the Volcano move very quickly after the start of phase 2, and with that one you can also kind of just stand there and shoot at him as he does it. And so usually you can get like 3 bleeds on him before you really even have to do much. And then from that point forward, you can just continue to use the pulley crossbow more until you actually win, or you could switch over to melee and start the actual like melee battle, which I am about to start describing how to do right now. This is the part of the video that's like the actual meat of the guide, where I describe each move, starting with phase 1 and kind of progressing from there logically, just how the moves come out. So I guess the first thing to review would be like the best weapon to use in phase 1, because we know phase 2 the best weapons are the pulley crossbow or Black Flame Tornado, but what's in phase 1? So I think that would be Black Flame Blade, because when you use that on a dagger, the dagger gives you extremely fast like swing speed. You can also use the Wakizashi, for example. That dagger has innate bleed, so you're getting bleed on top of the Black Flame Blade. You can pretty much spam it because it costs so little FP to use, and when your blade is enhanced with that black flame, it will do about 500 damage per hit, which is significantly better than any kind of like non-upgraded weapon you might be able to use otherwise. So this is definitely the highest damage output that you can get. And in phase 1, the neutral position is going to be just directly behind the leg that is braced. He's got like a bone that's bracing his broken leg. You want to stand behind his ankle and always try to be attacking his ankle, that ankle specifically. And as for the moves that he uses in Phase 1, you should already be kind of familiar with this one if you watched the beginning part of the video, the avalanche move. He uses it when you're kind of at a long distance away from him. You can dismount Torrent to dodge it, or if you're not on Torrent already, you just have to make sure that you're dodging the snow instead of the plate. So if you're really close to him, he'll sometimes put the plate right in front of you and you'd be tempted to dodge because the plate is basically touching you, but no, you want to wait for the snow to appear on the ground, and the snow is what you want to dodge. And same thing if you're far away. He'll put the plate down, he'll kind of fling it, and that will tempt you to dodge because that's a movement, but you still have to wait for the snow to appear and then reach you, and you need to dodge through the snow. And then the other move that we're already familiar with is the striding plate slam, and again, this is an awesome thing to punish because it takes him a really long time to stop like the animation for doing it. All you have to do to dodge it is to continue to approach him as he approaches you, and he'll just go right over you. And you should be able to get at least 2 charge heavies during this move, one when he's kind of like leaning forward and slamming, and then the other one when he stands up. You'll probably be able to get more than just 2 charge heavies, maybe a couple of light attacks as well, but just aim for at least 2 charge heavies. And then another thing that he can use with his plate, a different plate attack that he does when you're approaching him but at a shorter distance away than the striding plate slam, is the plate edge slam, and this can hit the ground like closer than you would expect. So even if you're basically almost underneath him, you still have to dodge when you're noticing that he's using this move, when he like lifts the plate kind of to his side a little bit and then slams the ground with it. There's no getting around just learning the dodge timing. You just have to be aware of when to dodge. And so you dodge the first plate slam and he will do another one right after that, which if you just continue to approach him, sprinting towards that neutral position behind his ankle, you won't even have to worry about that second swing because it'll just miss you. And then sometimes he'll put the plate to his side and swing it at you, but not actually slam the ground with it. He just swings it in front of him, and that is also something that you have to dodge through. Just memorize the timing for it, and then when he uses it, you can usually land a jumping attack on his ankle right after he makes you dodge. And if you hesitate, like if you don't continue to approach him as he continues to use this move, then he might swing his plate again, so you just have to be aware that he could do it twice if you're still far away. And then he has 2 plate reposition attacks that he'll use when you're directly underneath him to make distance from you again, and one is like an inner plate swing where he swings it just from out to in, and then one is an outer plate swing where he swings it from in to out. I don't know if that really makes sense, like in meaning like close to his chest, and then out meaning far away from his chest. In my opinion, the inner plate swing is more dangerous because I just get caught off guard more often by it because it kind of like comes out sneakily and very quickly. But the trick to not getting caught by this is just to continue to fight the fire giant without your camera locked onto him. You'll be able to keep him in focus in your camera more easily that way, and you'll be able to see it coming more easily. There's really no reason to lock onto the fire giant while you're fighting him in this battle, if you're using melee at least, because he is a really large target, so even if you're free aiming, it'll be really easy to hit him, even when you're free aiming, because he's gigantic. And this is an example of the outer plate swing. Like I said before, just you gotta remember when to dodge. This is the dodge timing, just dodge at the right time. And speaking of retreats that he does after he plate slams, this is another retreat that he can do, is the kind of backwards like shuffle. He'll shuffle backwards and slam the plate down in front of him vertically, and you do probably want to dodge, even if you don't know if this is going to hit you or not. Like, you don't necessarily have to dodge if you're far away from him, because it'll just slam down on the ground and there's no shockwave or nothing, so it won't hit you. But if you're kind of close to him, you might want to dodge anyway just to be safe, because it can catch you off guard. And then usually, once you continue to approach him after that vertical slam, he'll do the swing, but if you're close enough to him, that swing will miss you, so if you just continue to sprint at him, that's how I like to dodge this move, and then just get like a charged heavy attack or 2 if you can. And he's got a couple other versions of the plate slam where he slams like the middle of the plate like flat onto the ground. He's got one version where he just stands there and does it, and then he's got another version where he winds up and lifts his leg up and then does it. With the standing plate slam, there is a pretty long wind up to that, so sometimes you can just continue to sprint towards his ankle into the neutral position, and he'll do it like a little bit late, and as long as you're directly under him, it won't hit you. So you can do that, but I like to dodge anyway when I've just memorized the timing, so I like to dodge when I know that it's about to hit the ground anyway, even if I'm like almost feel like I'm pretty much safe, because it will catch you off guard sometimes as well. And same with the wind-up plate slam. In fact, this is one of the moves that I love the most. I love when he does this move because it's really easy to punish. You can see when he's starting it and he kind of just groans and makes a sound and lifts his leg up really slowly. And you can get a couple of light attacks in when he's lifting his leg up, and then he holds it in the air for a second, and then as soon as he starts to bring it back down, when his foot is about to hit the ground, that's when you want to dodge, because that's when his plate is about to hit the ground as well, just a second after that. And then you can usually get 2 charged heavy attacks in on his ankle right after that. And that's why I like this attack, because of those 2 charged heavy attacks. They're pretty consistent and reliable. And the last of his many different various plate slams is the jumping plate slam, which I love when he does as well, because it's very long to stop the animation for it, so you can usually get like 2 charged heavies in when he does this as well. If you're directly under him, you don't even have to worry about this hitting you. You can just continue to approach his ankle, and then he'll just like land somewhere and won't hurt you at all, and you just do a couple of charged heavies. But if you're far away, you might have to dodge. Just learn the dodge timing. It's not that hard because it's kind of hard to miss. It's easy to see coming. But overall, like 10 out of 10 move. Love to see it happen. And that's it for plate slams, but the foot stomps are a whole different thing to talk about. He has a couple different ones, like a single foot stomp and a double foot stomp, and honestly, the single foot stomp is the reason the neutral position is behind his ankle instead of directly under him, because this thing will catch you off guard all the time. It's the thing that killed me the most besides like the floating fire orb when I was learning this fight, and it's just because the foot stomp hitbox is a little bit larger than you would think that it is, and so if you're under him even a little bit, it'll hit you and you'll die. So to avoid this, you could continue to look at his other foot. Keep that in frame with your camera unlocked while you're fighting him, and that is one way to avoid it, but the other way is just to not stand under him. Just stand behind his ankle, and it won't hit you if you're there. And the other version of the foot stomp that he does is awesome, because it's like the double foot stomp where he does the right foot first, which is not the one that you're usually standing behind and attacking, so you can see it coming. And it's not very difficult to learn the timing for the second foot stomp that is the actual one that's dangerous, because the first foot stomp makes a sound, and then you can kind of just count a few seconds and then dodge for the second one every single time. And usually I can get a full charged heavy as well as a couple other attacks. Usually I'd get a couple of light attacks after that. This is a good move to punish. And besides that, in phase 1, he just rolls around a lot, something you have to consider. He will roll in any direction, and when he does a roll, if he's about to roll on top of you, you have to dodge when his plate is about to hit the ground. But usually if you're directly under him when he's rolling, it's just like a retreat that he does, just to make distance from you to start using his distance moves. And if you're directly under him, it probably isn't going to hit you, and you won't really have to worry about it. So just something he does that's annoying. As soon as he does it, just hop on Torrent, approach him again, and try to get behind his ankle as quickly as possible. And then of course, like we remember in the first section of the video, when he gets to about 80% health, or you break the leg brace on his leg, he's going to go into like phase 1.5, where he lights his hand on fire after rolling away. And from that point forward, all the way into phase 2, he's going to be able to use 3 different like fire moves, one of them being the Burn O Flame move, where he makes the fire pillars just like he does at the beginning of phase 2. You just have to make sure that you're not standing on top of where the pillars are about to appear. You can easily see them on the ground. There's a little bit of fire on the ground. You just have to make sure you're not standing on those fire little spots for a second before the flame pillars appear, and they will quickly disappear, and it's not that dangerous of a move as long as you're paying attention to the ground. But you can get a couple attacks in on his ankle as he's doing this if you want, but that is much safer to do if you're using a fast weapon and light attacks, because if you're trying to charge heavies on him, a fire pillar might appear directly under you before you're done doing that. And then he can do this Giant's Flame Take Thee move, and it's just a very slow moving fireball. The only tip that I can give you really is Carry and Retaliation makes quick work of this thing. Since it's slow moving, it's not very difficult to get the timing down for when it's about to hit you. You do have to wait for him to launch it out of his hand. That's not the point that you have to like use Carry and Retaliation or dodge or whatever. You have to wait for that fireball to actually get to you through the air, make its way through the air, because it takes a little bit of time to do that. It's slow moving. But yeah, Carry and Retaliation or dodge for that. And then the third move that he can do in phase 1.5 is the Flame of the Fell God, where he makes that fire orb. Again, very dangerous thing to have floating around, because if it explodes on you, it does so much damage that you'll die. And he also attacks you while that thing is floating around, which is the actual thing that makes it dangerous. But again, with this move, if it's kind of at your level, like it will spawn up in the air, so it's not good to go and carry in retaliation it when it's up in the air, but carry in retaliation is the best thing to do to it because it will completely get rid of it, and you can usually run right up to it before it has a chance to explode because the explosion does take a second. Otherwise, as soon as it's triggered, dodge away twice, and you should be far enough away to not get exploded. And that's it for phase 1, so time to discuss phase 2. The neutral position would be directly in front of the fire giant, but like at a medium distance away, like you can see on the screen right now. There is other places you could be to fight him, but this is the most consistent place because the hand attacks that he uses are the most easy to see attacks coming. And so once you learn the dodge timings for them, it's not very difficult to dodge any of them. So we're moving on to the moves that he uses individually in phase 2, and as we can remember from the beginning of the video, the first move that he always does is the Burn O Flame move, where he creates like fire pillars that come up out of the ground. He does it at the beginning of phase 2, but he also does it just randomly in the fight. It doesn't necessarily only happen at the beginning. Just something I experienced when I was doing a bunch of testing for this video. I did phase 2 a bunch of times, and this is just something that I think seems like is an actual fact, but I obviously have no way of confirming that this is definitely the case. But it seems like when he does this move at the beginning of the phase, you can stand in front of his hand, and that seems to be a safe spot as long as you're a step or two away from the actual hand. There's never going to be a fire pillar that spawns in front of the hand, only potentially next to it or on top of it. So if you're standing right up against the hand and something spawns underneath him, underneath his hand, it might hit you, but if you're standing a step or two away, it's not going to hit you, and you'll still be able to reach the hand with Black Flame Tornado. But when he uses this move randomly throughout the fight, when it's not the first move in the phase, it can spawn a fire pillar in front of the hand, so that's not a safe spot unless it's just right at the beginning of the phase. So again, I don't know if that's guaranteed, but that is just what I experienced, and I did do phase 2 a bunch of times. And then the next move to go over is the Volcano attack. He often does this after the Fire Pillar Burn O Flame move, maybe just a move or two after that. It happens very quickly into the start of the phase. That's why I wanted to include it as like the second thing to go over. And you can stand right up against him and just attack him while this is happening. There's no guaranteed like hitboxes that come out of his body itself. If you want to risk it, you can just run up to him and start attacking him while this is happening. You should be able to get a few light attacks in, and don't spam it because if you get locked into an animation, you're not going to be able to dodge quickly, but you can do like one light attack at a time, wait a second, do another light attack, etc. And that should give you enough reaction time to dodge away if one of those like volcano projectiles does land on top of you. It does take a second for it to explode after it lands, so if it lands on top of you, you should have enough time to just dodge away as long as you're doing like one light attack at a time and be able to survive that explosion. But the safer way to deal with this attack is to stand far away from him and do ranged attacks, or if you don't have a ranged attack and you just want to be cautious, just hop on Torrent and get really far away from him because that's the easiest way to go about dodging those projectiles. And then of course in phase 2 he will roll around a lot just as he did in phase 1, and as long as you're standing in the neutral position that I went over a second ago, like in front of him, kind of a little bit away from him, he's only going to roll to either side, so left or right. And if you're in the neutral position, you don't have to worry about him rolling on top of you, so you'll never be in any danger when he does this. You just have to chase after him and go back to the neutral position as quickly as you can. If you're under him and he uses this, like if you're attacking his legs or whatever, that is a lot more dangerous, but that is kind of one of the reasons why the neutral position that I'm suggesting is in front of him a little bit far away. So now we'll get into like the hand attacks that he does, just like punching and like palm slams and stuff. He has a couple attacks that come out of his left hand and a couple attacks that come out of his right hand, so you will know kind of what's coming based on what hand he winds up with. If he draws back the hand on the left, he might just do a single like fist slam onto the ground. It's kind of fast and you only have time to get a light attack in. When he does that, just dodge and then get a light attack and then go back to neutral. And then the other thing that might happen when he uses that arm to kind of wind up, the arm that is his right arm and it's on your left. He can also do like the single double fist slam, which I just call it that because he does one fist slam and then a second later he does a double fist slam right after, and that's pretty consistent. He will always do that, and you can get a single light attack in when he does the single fist slam, and then you just have to make sure that you're expecting the double fist slam slightly after. If you're a little bit far away from him, you'll want to dodge, but if you're close to him, like if you're inside of the fist slam, the first one, you don't have to dodge because he's going to miss you either way, so you can just kind of wait for him to do that like double fist slam and then run out to those fists, and you can usually get a charged heavy attack on him. And then the two moves that come out of his other hand, his left hand, the right hand that you see when you're looking at him. You can do like a palm slam where he slaps the ground, and then a second later he'll do like a swipe with his other hand. And for this move, you can just get a light attack or two in when he does that palm slam, and then you just have to dodge the swipe that he does right after that. There's nothing much more to it than that. Like, there's only one way to interact with this move. You might be able to get a charged heavy attack in on that first palm slam, but you just have to use a fast weapon because that other hand swipe comes out pretty quick. And then the other attack that he can do when he winds up with that arm is just an elbow slam, where he just goes down on his elbow and sits there for a second. You can dodge forward and then just get a charged heavy attack in, or one or two light attacks, and then you just have to return to neutral because this move is over pretty quickly. And then the last few hand slam moves that he can do in the neutral position is one where he winds up backwards. He doesn't necessarily like use one hand or the other. He will just kind of like stand up as tall as he can and then just fall forward onto his elbows, and it's a really slow wind up, so you should be able to see it coming very easily. And when he does that, you usually can get a charged heavy attack as well as maybe just like a light attack or two in there. Something else quick to consider with that is his hand that's on the left is gonna be picked up faster than the one on the right, so if you're able to attack the one on the right, you'll have more time to attack it before he picks it up. And then a different thing that he can do when he kind of like stands up almost is the wind up body slam, I call it. Again, he's just going to try to fall on top of you, but he does it with his shoulder instead of his elbows. And with this one, you want to dodge forward kind of like when he's about to fall on you, which is just after he touches his hands together if you're looking up at his hands. And then after you dodge forward, you'll want to attack his eyeball because that's his like weak spot, and usually you can get a charged heavy attack in there on his eyeball and then a light attack or two before he potentially could like start to spark up some fire in his mouth. And if he does that, you're gonna have to run away, try to run outside of the perimeter that he's holding his hands in. He does create an explosion, that's the reason you have to run away. He just like explodes out of his mouth, but you can attack his hands. You can stand next to his hands, or in between them rather, and you'll have an opportunity to get a couple of charged heavy attacks in on his hands before he actually like goes back to the neutral position and stands up a little bit. So this is an awesome move. I like to see it come out because usually you can get a stagger when you see this move come out because there's a lot of opportunity to do charged heavy attacks on him. And then we get into like the fire attacks. He does have a couple of those in phase 2 as well. They're not any different, but they are stronger than they were in phase 1. So the Giant's Flame Take Thee, just that like fireball that he shoots at you. There is two of them. He shoots one right after the other, so you just have to dodge the first one with the same exact dodge timing that you had in phase 1. Again, it's a slow moving projectile, so you just have to wait and watch that fireball approach you and then dodge the fireball right when it is about to hit you, rather than dodging when he like launches it out of his hand, because there's usually about a half a second in between those two events. And then for the second fireball, you have to dodge immediately after you dodge the first time, so just spam the dodge button. Make sure you dodge twice, and that should be all you have to do. You can carry in retaliation this move, but it's really difficult because if you just do it with like the normal timing, if you wait for it to approach you and then do it, you're not going to have time to stop the carry in retaliation animation before the second fireball hits you. So you actually have to start the carry in retaliation animation early, and then that stays up for like a second or half a second or something, and the fireball will hit the end of that like window of carry in retaliation being up and having a hitbox. And if you allow that first fireball to hit the end of the carry in retaliation animation, you should have enough time to then start the second carry in retaliation animation for the second fireball, and you'll be able to catch them both. Really tight timing. I would recommend dodging instead. And same thing for the Flame of the Fell God. It's going to come out and behave in exactly the same way that it did in phase 1, but now there's just two of them, so even more dangerous, really. This is a scary attack, but you can carry in retaliation them if you want. I would only recommend doing that if your fire giant happens to be kind of far away from you and not posing a danger, because if he's close to you and like trying to punch you and stuff, stuff while these things are out, that is a recipe for disaster. So wait for him to be far away and then try your carried retaliation. Otherwise, you can hop on Torrent and just run and sprint past those 2 flame orbs really quick, and then hop off of Torrent as soon as they explode and you've made some distance so that they don't explode on you. And that's what I would recommend. That's like the easiest way to go about dodging, quote unquote, this move. And then he has a couple of fire breath moves that he can use as well. The first one is when he like grabs his mouth with his hand. That means he's going to breathe fire just straight down at the ground. He does this when you're under him. You just have to make some distance. As long as you have a little bit of distance away from him, this move is not going to hit you, and you just have to use ranged attacks if you can. And then the other fire breath move that he has is the forward fire breath, which is significantly more dangerous than the downward one because it's very unreliable to dodge in any other way other than what I'm about to show you, where you hop on Torrent and then just sprint sideways as he's doing this. You can try to sprint sideways if you're far away from him on foot, but that is very unreliable to me. I did try that a bunch of times, and it really depends on your distance as to whether or not you're going to succeed with it, and I couldn't really figure out like the perfect distance to be when he does this, because I would die sometimes and I would succeed at other times, and it was just confusing to me. So what I would recommend is just hopping on Torrent. Every time I've hopped on Torrent in my testing and ran sideways, I've successfully dodged it. So it seems to be a very reliable way of dodging this move, and that's what I would recommend doing. And I guess the kind of last thing to go over in the fight is what to do if you stagger him. It's not complicated really. All you have to do is run up and attack the eyeball. That's where you would get a critical hit if that's what you're trying to do. He does lay down for kind of a long time, so you have a decent chunk of time to go and like find his eyeball to attack it. And what I would recommend is just doing charge heavies into his eyeball, because the actual like critical hit doesn't do that much more damage than simple charged heavies. And then the critical hit animation, it takes him a little while to recover from that, longer than it does for him to just get up after being staggered. So that's just what I would do. I would just do charged heavies into his eyeball until he gets up. I wouldn't even bother with a critical hit. So you can do the critical hit if you want, though. Doesn't really matter, because either way, you're still going to just return to the neutral position and then wait for him to continue to attack you. So that should be it for all the moves that he has that you'll see come out in Phase 1 and Phase 2. Hopefully this information helped you beat this battle at Rune Level 1, Weapon Level 0. The next part of the video is just me fighting the Fire Giant with Carrion Slicer, another move that does a lot of damage against him even at Rune Level 1, Weapon Level 0. I was just using the Meteor Staff. The Meteor Staff is pretty good. And yeah, I just wanted to include this clip because when I'm trying to figure out a boss in Elden Ring and how to dodge all his moves and stuff, I find it easier to learn when I watch somebody else do it first. So hopefully this is that for you. Hopefully you can watch me do it hitless, and that will teach you the kind of flow of the battle. And yeah, if you found this video helpful and you want to see more Rune Level 1, Weapon Level 0 Elden Ring content in the future, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks.